Okay, so let's review what he said about Yeshayahu or what he said that Yeshayahu was saying about the Bahag and those who were drawn after them. So I was trying to we did a lot of Radak last time, and I just want to summarize the upshot. Hold on, I'm just gonna make sure I'm sharing the right screen, which I'm not. Yeah, so one of you guys, I mean, it was kind of a jumble a little bit last time. Anyone recall the thrust of what he was saying about what Yeshayahu was saying and then how we applied that to the Monei HaMitzvos?
If I recall correctly, the thrust of the rule was that the Jews were no longer even mitzvahs from Abba, they were paying lip service, and they weren't seeking to understand the mitzvahs.
Right. Right. So those were the two main points, right? The lip service and then the not seeking to understand the mitzvahs. The Radak kept on framing it as an excuse that there were two groups of people. There were the Chachamim who knew how to read, and it's like you give them a sealed book, and they say, "I can't read it because it's sealed." And what should they say?
I can read it.
Right, and therefore just unseal it, and then they would read it. And then there were the people who don't know how to read, and they'd say, "I don't know how to read," and they really were just depending on the Chachamim. The Chachamim really were responsible. So now, what does that have to do with our topic at hand of the minyan and mitzvos? The insinuation, at least. Yeah, sure.
That I guess the Chachamim kind of were responsible for accounting for analyzing what the mitzvahs were.
Right, and the motive, according to the application from Yeshayahu, would be.
It's a common.
So I mean, again, this is my guess. I don't know for sure, but if we're applying this directly, then it sounds like he's saying they could have actually done a good job counting the mitzvahs, and they didn't. Right. And that was in service of their warped sense of avodas Hashem, where they were serving him with their lips, but their mind was far from him. So it was like an excuse to not actually think into the mitzvos. And it's an excuse because it's something that they could have overcome because they had the intellectual ability. So that's I was thinking about that, and that's a huge charge. I mean, that's not you don't get, let's say, for example, if Rashi and Tosfos disagree, you don't get Tosfos accusing Rashi of embracing the wrong answer in order to avoid serving God. This is a pretty big charge here. So again, I don't know how the Rambam. I don't know how the Rambam what led the Rambam to connect that nevuah to this this situation that he faced. But it's a big charge. That's all I can say. Yeah. Which also means, though, that, so what does this mean for us in terms of the way we relate to mitzvos then?
We're almost chayav to analyze them.
Yeah, then we are chayav to actually analyze them and count them correctly, because if we don't, so then it's possible that we're falling prey to the same mistake of refusing to examine the mitzvos in order to avoid them. I'm trying to think of an example of this, and this is just the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know if this is a good example, and if you got a better one, then let me know. But it's if you had a doctor who claimed to be a doctor on the one hand, but then said, I'm not going to try to define any of the organs of the body, so then you would suspect that there's something else going on in what he's calling his medical practice. The mitzvahs are the parts of the system. And if you claim to be working with the system, you should know what the material is that you're working with. The mitzvahs are the units that make up the mitzvah system. So then how can you just, willy-nilly count Bikur Cholim and Ner Chanukah and V'ahavta l'recha kamocha and Kedoshim Tiyu, just these are all mitzvahs. It's just the framework is off in a way which shows that you are not connecting to the nature of the system.
Chazal. Chazal don't really have a meaning of mitzvahs.
Right, so that's the big question, and we kind of alluded to this last time, that there's only one source for, or maybe this was when you were here, I think, right? That the machlokes about whether there's 613.
Oh,
did we talk about that? Yeah, we alluded to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it definitely seems like the Rambam and the Ramban and those who are counters of the mitzvahs made a much bigger deal of the number 613 than Chazal did. Now, but I don't know how much we can infer from that. In other words, one possibility is that I mean, one possibility is that they didn't think it was as important, but the other possibility is that it was as important, but they didn't involve themselves in counting because it was known, or like there was no need to write it down, you know. So that's like speculation, I think, on our part. But a good question though, why they didn't involve themselves with it. Okay, so should we go back to the Sefer Mitzvahs, or anyone have any other thoughts or questions about Yeshayahu? I mean, I don't claim to have like penetrated the depths of it, but I just wanted to get a sense of like how the Rambam's applying it. Okay, so let's go back to the Rambam. So we are now in the PDF on, hold on, I just gotta move you guys for a second to figure out what page it is. So we are on, are there page numbers in this guy? Yeah, page Hey. And I think we are at, oh, we just lost Chaim. Let's wait for a little while until he gets, give him a minute to get back. His internet connection was a little unstable. All right, you know what, we'll just go on because we don't know how long he's going to be out. Okay, so we're at V'chein. Oh, there he is. Well, my initial intuition was better. Okay, all right. V'chein, b'chol es sheshamati as haros, rabos hamispar, shenischabru etzlenu be'eretz Sfarad. So too, the more I heard, or every time I heard the many azharos, great in number, that were compiled by us in the land of Spain, nehevchut tsiri alai, I guess my, I don't know what that idiom is, machamas mashar isi mi pirsum hadavar v'his pashtuso, on account of the publication of this thing and its widespread nature. Do you guys know what the azharos he's talking about are? Anyone? So it's a genre of poetry, I believe, that was a poetic rendition of all the 613 mitzvos. And like, I think the Rambam himself even wrote one, or at least it's printed at the back of the book. I'm just trying to see if there's any examples here. Yeah, let me just quickly look for a sample on alator.org just to show you what we're talking about. If I can't find it, then I'll save it for next time. Oftentimes they rhyme. I'm looking for Sadia Gaon's one because I think his is one of the early ones. Is the internet now no longer fast? All right, whatever. All right, I'll find it. I'll try to look at it next time. Okay. Anyway, so basically, like he had the same problem. He heard all these poets like writing poetry to try to capture all the 630 mitzvos, and he saw how horrendously these mistakes spread. Even though we can't make them guilty, we can't hold them guilty. That's a little dig there at the paitanim, right? Because was someone asking Q&A about who wrote the slichos? Yeah, right. And so I mentioned that with the slichos, then they were chachamim who wrote the slichos that we use. But we got to remember that the ones that made it through the generations, I guess, are like the top. But there were tons of ignorant paitanim in the Rambam's day that he criticizes a lot for, like just writing stuff for the sake of poetry without understanding the metaphysical like implications of what they're saying. So the es chovasa mitad munasam. So umanusam arevus hadibur v'yofi hachariza. So what's the only thing they're obligated in if you're a poet? What's your task?
Rhyme.
Yeah, it's nice sounding things, right? So sweetness of speech and beauty of stanzas, I guess, beauty of arrangements. Kvar asu b'shleimus. They did that perfectly. Aval hadavar hacharus nimshichu bo achar bal halachos gedolos.
Quick question.
Sure.
One guy's eating meat, two guys are eating dairy. Can they be started for a zima?
You know, I always forget this. I don't know. Don't know.
Okay.
Yep. I haven't been in that situation in a while.
Yes, if they're eating together.
Yes, if they're eating together, apparently, Isaac says.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's different if two guys are eating meat.
Oh, yeah?
Because then they can't eat the dairy,
I don't know.
even though they're like it's the majority.
Yeah. Okay. If only there were a book that had every halacha in it. Yeah. No, we should. I don't want to interrupt, but we should check at some point. Okay. Anyway. So anyway, they did their poetry correctly. Aval hadavar hacharos nimshchu bo achar ba halachos gedolos v'zulaso min hachachamim ha'achronim. But in terms of their, I thought harus meant their poetry. Yeah. In terms of their poetry, they were drawn after the the Bahag and his like among the later Chachamim. So not a new point here, just bemoaning now. So I guess it's one thing if you have people. I guess what is the Rambam adding by talking about the Paitanim? Like, why does he even need to mention that? He already said that these people are making mistakes in terms of the count.
Because they had a different objective. Like he's showing that they weren't just focused on meeting the mitzvahs.
Right. So that he says. I'm just wondering, is that why did he have to bring up the fact that these people had a different objective in the first place? I have an idea, but curious what you guys think. So like, I think there's two things. I mean, I think I'm thinking it fits in. I don't think he's doing this intentionally. I think it kind of fits in with his Yeshayahu thing that he mentioned. There were two groups. There were the Chachamim and then the Hamon, So it's one thing if the Chachamim don't understand the mitzvos, but once it becomes popularized through songs among the Hamon, then it spreads to a national level in a different way and it takes hold. It's kind of like how, I guess one of the good things that spread from the Rambam, at least in concept, is the Yudgam Ikarim. That took off, and like, why did it take off? Is it because people are studying the Pirush Mishnayos? No. I mean, I don't know this historically, but why do you think it took off? Animamins, right? The Animamins are like Yigdal, like the popular, it's printed in the Sidurim, some people recite them, so like it's a different, the scope of the problem is different when it gets to the level of the Hamon, and especially given what the Rambam said about who his primary audience of the Mishnah Torah is, he wants this to be for everybody. So it wouldn't be enough to just so if the Hamon hadn't been reached, maybe the Rambam could have avoided all of this and just given them a new list of mitzvos, and then they would have accepted it, and the Chachamim would have complained, but then the Hamon would have had it. But now the Hamon has the sickness in them as well. Yeah. Okay. V'kasher chashavti b'kach. When I thought about this, v'yadati es pirsum haminui hazeh shebidei ha'am. Oh, there you go. So when I guess I it's a little cricket guy. It's okay, unless you're bothered by it. When I thought about this and I knew how widespread this count was in the hands of the nation, Yadati ki kisha'azkir ani es hamino amiti asher roy limnoso. I knew that once I mentioned the correct count that was proper to count, but open sasum b'li rayos, in a concealed manner without proofs. Hari hakori harishon shikraehu yale b'libo shezeh taos. So the first guy who reads it is going to think that I'm making a mistake. V'tiye l'da'ato hochachas hataos. Okay, what do you think? Let's see if you can anticipate this. What do you think the guy's proof is that the Rambam made a mistake?
That there are other books that have.
Yes. So the guy's proof that I made a mistake, heyoso hefech mashakasav ploni ploni, is because that's not what so-and-so said, right? Ki kach hi das rov yichide hasagula bizmanenu zeh. Oh, this is a beautiful line, okay? This is like one to highlight for the ages. Because such is the opinion of the majority of the individuals, of the distinguished individuals in this time. What does he say? She'ein amitas hadavar nivchenes bi'inyano ela bihis amso ledivrei mi shekadam. The truth of a matter is not discerned by its content, but rather by its correspondence with the words of someone prior, beli livchon es hadavar hakodem, without testing the prior thing, v'koshkein ha'amon, and all the more so for the Hamon, meaning the Yechidei Segula, the elite scholars of the nation, this is their problem. How do we define truth on Friday?
Corresponding with reality.
Corresponding with reality, right? So he's saying how do they define truth? Correspondence with the words of some famous guy, relying on authority, right? Yeah, and koshkein the Hamon. I mean, you can't, to a certain extent, you can't blame the Hamon because they can't investigate it on their own. They're kind of forced to rely on authorities. But the Yechidei Segula, they should know better.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, nice line. Okay, Lachain. It's kind of like the opposite of the Rambam's famous line of Kabel ha'emes mimi she'amro, right? Accept the truth from whoever says it.
Right.
This is no, define the truth by the person who says it, All right, lachain ra'isi lanachon lahaktim ma'amar lifnei achibor shehis karti v'huzeh. Therefore, I saw fit to preface my composition, my compendium with a treatise that I would mention, v'huzeh, which is this. This is the Sefer Mitzvos. Ava'er bo minyan hamitzvos v'heach roy limnosan. I will explain in it the count of the mitzvos and how it is proper to count them. Va'avi lekach Rayos mipsuke haTorah u'midibur chachamim befirushehem. I will bring for this proofs from the psukim of the Torah and from the words of the chachamim and their commentaries. Va'aktim klalim sheroy lismoch alehem v'minyan mitzvos. And I will preface it with general principles which are proper to rely upon in the counting of the mitzvos. So now this is now stating his plan for the Sefer mitzvos. The kasher yislabin minyanan al pi hamamar zeh. Once you purify their count through this treatise, baraya barura she'ein ba safek, with a clear proof without a doubt. Tisbarer likore oso taos kol mi shemana hefech ma shemanino anachno. Then it will become clear to the reader the error of anyone who counted it contrary to our count. Ve'in li tzorech lahashiv la'adam mesuyam v'lo levar ta'uso. I will have no need to respond to refute a particular person or to clarify his error. Kimisha to'elas v'hatachlis hamechuvenes b'mamar zeh tusagna. I don't know how to conjugate that. L'mavakshehem b'li zos. Since the beneficial outcome and the intended purpose of this treatise will be grasped by those who seek it without this, meaning he doesn't need to go pick on particular people. Once he lays out the rules, then that'll refute everyone, and everyone who needs to be refuted. Lefish ani avair es mitzvos kulan uminyanan mitzvah. I'm going to clarify all of the mitzvos and their count and I'll count them mitzvah by mitzvah. Va'aviraya al kol ma sheyesh bo safek, and I'll bring a proof on everything that there's a doubt about. O mash efshar sheyishke bo mi she'ein lo bekius b'dinei haTorah, or anything that's possible for a person to err on who lacks bekius in the dinei haTorah. Va'salik shegiyasu va'avir kol ma sheyesh bo safek, and I will remove his error and I will explain everything about which there is a doubt. Yeah. Yep. So, I think it's pretty clear, right? He basically wants to undo this problem. He's going to undo it in the most efficient way possible. Write a book that shows how to count mitzvos and then count all of them, so that by the time you get to the Mishnah Torah, you're not going to bother him with challenging what he counts as a mitzvah and what he doesn't.
So that's. I remember at the beginning of this, we were talking about why he would include the mini mitzvos, and it didn't really fit in with his overall. Right. So it sounds like, let's just put it all together then, right? So in the Mishnah Torah, he's putting the minyan and mitzvos so that you as the reader know that he didn't miss anything. Right. Okay. And that was what we questioned, why is that necessary? And I think I have an answer to that now. Okay. But then now he's saying, if I just listed the mitzvos and the reader saw it went against the Bahag, then they would just deny my whole count. So I'm going to make an entire Sefer mitzvos where I prove why I counted it this way. All right, so now going back, I think we can answer why this minyan hamitzvos fits into his overall project. In other words, another route he could have took is just done away with the minyan mitzvos altogether, just like he did away with the Masechta divisions, right? But I think based on what we've said, then I think there's an approach. What do you guys say? No, I guess he's just this is one of the areas that he needs to make sure it gets transmitted correctly.
Yeah, why?
I guess because everyone else was wrong about it.
So then why doesn't he just ignore them?
Because we're obligated to investigate the mitzvahs.
Right, exactly, right? In other words, so I think that's why he's so keen on preserving the number and making clear what is a mitzvah, because if you don't know what the mitzvahs, in other words, it's not, okay, let me put it this way. I'm going to borrow a classic division, even though it might not fit, but I'm going to shoehorn it, okay, is when he first said, I want to list all the mitzvahs so you make sure I'm not missing any, it sounded like he was speaking quantitatively. That you might forget chalitza, whoops, but really it sounds more now like he's speaking qualitatively, that if he did not identify what he means by mitzvah and give a complete presentation of the system, you would have a distorted idea of the system, which would be an impediment to your Yiras Hashem, So for a practical purpose of people not doubting his authority, and for the sake of what the Navi was prophesying about, he has to count all the mitzvahs and show you how to do them, but he's including the main work in a different book, because the work of counting the mitzvahs does not belong to the project of the Mishnah Torah. That's Dinei mitzvah, that's because it's not practical, he won't go through and actually show you how to count a mitzvah in the Mishnah Torah. That's a separate book. Because that would really be the other option is take this and make it the like attach the Sefer Mitzvos onto the Mishnah Torah, which, you see most printed editions of the Mishnah Torah. That's what some people do, Not a bad idea, but not part of the project.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, onward. My intent in this compendium, meaning the Sefer Mitzvos, is not to enumerate the laws of any mitzvah of the mitzvos. Ella limnosam bilvad. Okay, but just to count them. Now, this next line is very important for the methodology of the Sefer Mitzvos. V'im efaresh mehen mashehu b'shas haskarasan. If I explain a little bit at the time I mention them, hare afareshenu rak al derech perush hashem. I will only explain it by way of clarification of the term or the name. Kidei sheyodea hatzivui hazeh ha'azhara mahu, so that you know what this commandment is or what this prohibition is. V'shem zeh, and this name al mahu ne'amar, on what it was stated, meaning what it's talking about. V'kasher tusag yedias. So in other words, you'll find in the Sefer Mitzvah sometimes he gives explanations. So what is the objective that defines how much he explains something?
As long as you need it for explanation.
Yeah, to know what the name refers to, right? So let's say, for example, he said, let's say Likros Kriya Shema, right? So, or Kriya Shema, let's just call it Kriya Shema, right? So he might explain, this means reading these three parshios, and his intent is not to tell you the laws, but so that when you ask the question, what is Kriya Shema, you'll have an answer to that.
I see.
Yeah.
Aren't the laws just more of a explanation of what?
Okay, so this is a good question, okay, because on the one hand, the answer is yes, is that obviously the more you know the laws, then the more you'll be able to understand what Kriya Shema is, but it sounds like the overriding concern in the Mishnah Torah is practical, whereas Perush Hashem sounds like a theoretical thing. In other words, you won't be able to take his Perush Hashem and extrapolate practical laws from it, and if you just had the practical laws, you might not know what the essence of the mitzvah really is. Like, I'll give you an example. Is this going to be a good example? I'm trying to think of examples where what he mentions in the Sefer Mitzvos is not what he says in the Yad. Okay, I'll give an example. I don't know if this is a good example. Okay, so in the Sefer Mitzvos for Ahavas Hashem, which is mitzvah number 3, he says he presents it as the ultimate pleasure that a person has when he contemplates God's Maasim and his Torah. Okay, in the Mishnah Torah, in Hilchos Yesodei Torah Perek Beis, he says, He'achi haderech la'avaso v'yiraso, and he explains how you attain Yiras Hashem and Ahavas Hashem. So he says, when you contemplate, God's creations, which are infinite in their chachma, then you're filled with an ahava, So like, again, I don't know if this is the best example, but in the Sefer Mitzvos, he's defining what is love of God. It's this state of ultimate pleasure as a human, as a Tzelem Elokim. But he's not spelling out how to arrive at it. In the Mishnah Torah, he says how to arrive at it, and he even has 3 chapters of Aristotelian physics to open the paths to get there. But he doesn't necessarily define the experience of Ahavas Hashem. Now, again, I don't know if that's the best example because that is kind of atypical. You don't usually have mitzvahs that usually Netilas Lulav is the action of Netilas Lulav. Right. There's no Perush Hashem component that stands independently. Actually, one more sentence, then I gotta share another piece of methodology here. So, V'kasher tusag hidias minyanam b'rayos minamam razeh. Once you grasp the knowledge of their count through proofs from this treatise, as kiran ba'ofen stami, b'psichos osa hachibra hakola k'moshe marti. So after you've made it through this book and you understand the proofs for why I'm counting the mitzvahs this way, I'll mention them in a general manner in the introduction of that compendium, as I explained. So that's the minyan mitzvahs in the Mishnah Torah. Okay, so methodology here. Okay, so there's a letter where the Rambam tells one of his students to read the Mishnah Torah constantly and to make it your book. Okay, actually, I'm going to try to get the exact words here. So I asked the most Mishnah Torah-y Rav I know, which is, actually there's 2, but Rabbi Zucker. Hold on, let me see if I can find the email. I asked him point blank, Rabbi Zucker, when the Rambam says make it your book, what does he mean? How do you do that? So I can't find the email right now. I think this is so long ago that was on Hotmail, which I don't touch. Yeah. But I'll tell you his advice. He says two pieces of advice that kind of like work together. He says take every mitzvah and learn the Rambam's presentation of it in 4 places. Okay, the Sefer Mitzvos, where he'll explain the Pirush Hashem, the Minyan HaMitzvos formulation, where he'll say a 1-line description of the mitzvah, which is not necessarily the same thing as the Pirush Hashem, the Koseres, which is the 1-line summary at the beginning of each section, and then the first halachos where he introduces the mitzvah. So he says, if you go through all the mitzvahs like that, those are the 4 places where the Rambam like speaks about the essence of the mitzvah, but each from a slightly different angle. Then you'll gain a lot of like, that will give you a good overview of Taryag. And then the other thing he said is, I believe this is what he said, either that or someone else said it, is whenever you encounter anything in real life, like a real life halachic scenario, so then consult the Mishnah Torah, not because you're going to paskin like it, but in order to basically weave the fabric of the Mishnah Torah into your day-to-day existence. And what I did was, this was the first year that the 1-volume Rambams came out, so I actually carried the 1 volume with me for about 5 years. And the first time I did it was on a Pesach trip when our family went to like some hotel. So like I had it with me the entire Pesach. And then the rest of the time I would carry it in my backpack for school, and I would constantly be referencing it. And I think the combination of his first advice of like familiarizing myself with the system of Taryag from all these intro places of the Ram, and then making use of it the way the Rambam intended, like started allowing me to look at the world through what one of my friends calls Mishnah Torah eyes, where like it's like if anyone's ever read Halachic Man, like Halachic Man sees things in like brisker categories or halachic categories. This is like in Torah Rambam categories. They're related, but like just without the svaras. So anyway, yeah.
What would you say is the difference between how he presents it in the Koseres versus the Mitzvos?
Good question. I don't have a theory. I can only point to particular examples. One thing that I've suspected, but I don't know for sure, is in the Minyan HaMitzvos, he attaches psukim to all of them. And so what I wonder is if, like, I'm just going to throw this out here, not because I've vetted it, but like, I'm wondering if it is a definition of the mitzvah that is more emanating from Torah Shebechsav, whereas the Koseres is already a Torah Shebal-Peh formulation.
Okay.
But I don't know what that means. I don't know what the implications of that are. I don't know if it's true. Yeah. Similarly, while we're asking questions that we don't know the answers to, a big question is in the Sefer, in the Mishnah Torah, he's very clear that there's an order to everything. The question is, what's the order of the mitzvos in the Sefer HaMitzvos, or in the Minyan HaMitzvos, which is the same order? What's the logic behind the order? And this has been kind of like a theory of everything type thing in terms of you can discern orders in certain parts. Like, for example, in the mitzvos Aseh, he clearly starts with the most important mitzvos, and then he goes into Mikdash stuff. But is there an overarching scheme that explains everything? And I know Rabbi Zucker has given a shiur on that. I don't remember what his svara was, but that's like another like question, Mishnah Torah question, that's or Sefer Mitzvahs question that can be on one's mind. Yeah. Now, after all of that, I feel like I would feel guilty if we skipped the klalim, right? Now, the thing is like, this is a Rambam Bekius shiur with the intent of focusing on the Mishnah Torah. So I wouldn't want to spend like ages in this, but I kind of feel like we should at least read like the, what each of his 14 rules are, so we get a sense of this. I did not actually prepare a PDF, but let me just see if there's one online, and then I can just post that in the group, and then we could use that. Stop sharing for 1 second. Hold on, okay. Let's see if the internet is working now down here. I'm trying to see the Kafich edition if that is available. Okay, internet is working. It's just a little slow. Okay. Sefer mitzvos. Oh, did we lose? Zoom meetings is not responding. Wait for the program to respond.
Yeah, I'm still hearing you. I don't know what.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Can something be done about that cricket? It's coming through
Okay.
really strongly.
Interesting. Okay. So I was going to try to close the window.
See if that works.
Oh, you guys are back now, or at least you're.
I'm pretty sure that it is somewhere in the basement. We had this problem last year.
Alright.
Okay.
It's much better now. Wow.
Okay. Good. Sorry about that. I didn't realize it was.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was so.
Yeah. For some reason, the way that Zoom filters out sound, it
Yeah.
really picks up crickets.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
We now know who's on the board. All right. I'm gonna just paste this into the chat. Oh. Wait a minute. It's freezing again. Oh, you know what? Actually, I should paste it into the WhatsApp chat. I was going to paste it into the Zoom chat, but hold on. You guys still there?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
Yep.
still here.
okay. That's a yes. Okay. Yeah, it's Zoom has been flickering in weird ways. All right. Hold on. Let me just find. Ugh. Everything is freezing.
It's because it's almost winter.
All right. I just pasted the Kafif edition. Nope, there's a cricket again.
Oh my god.
Is it as bad, Isaac?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where is it?
Is it inside?
I had it inside.
I don't see it.
Is it in the vent? I don't know. Yeah.
That's.
All right, we'll see.
Huh.
Might not be anything we could do about it.
Is the Wi-Fi better down here? Is that
The Wi-Fi was not working at all upstairs. That's why we're down here for today. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it'll get fixed before tonight. But we'll see. All right. So let's just do this for now. Let's just read through the klalim and then call it a day for now. And that way we can start on the Hakdama to the Mishnah Torah tomorrow, maybe. Okay, so there are 14 klalim, and people make a big deal about how the Rambam loved the number 14. And I even saw one absurd claim that he really holds there are 14 ikarim, and that the 14th one is Bechira. And I'm like, no. Like, when the Rambam says there are 14, he means 14. And when he says there are 13, he means there are 13. So, like, it happens to be this is a 14 thing, but whatever. Okay, so Hashor Sharishon. She'in roy limnos bichlal hazeh mitzvos shehin midrabanan. Right, so you should not count mitzvos. By the way, I don't think this is the Rambam's formula. I think this is the Kafach summary. I don't know if this is the Rambam's actual Lashon, but again, we're just doing this as an overview. So you shouldn't count Durabanans. Now, this is an example of how he's saying that the Bahag did things that are strange. I just don't get how you can count a Durabanan as one of Taryag. Like, what does that even mean?
Right. Unless what they meant by Taryag was all the mitzvahs that are.
I mean, it could be, but it's Taryag. Well,
that was given promotion.
right. I mean, it's. Yeah, Taryag mitzvahs nemru l'Moshe b'Sinai.
Right.
And then it says Shnemar Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, and then Torah is the gematria 611 because the first two they heard Mipia Gevura. So like plain shot of the Memra is that they got
Their essence, right?
Yeah, and then the other problem is that like you're just gonna have so many Durabanans that how are you gonna how are you gonna limit it yourself to 613?
Well, I guess if they're gezeros on the deraisa, maybe that's
maybe right. I mean, my guess is he's only going to count Durabanans like Netilas Yadayim or like Purim, Megillah, yeah. Number 2, She'ein roy limnos kol ma shalomdim ba'achas mishlosh eshrei midos she'ator nidreshes ben. Hold yourself back, Isaac. That it's not proper to count everything that we learn out of the 13 midos that the Torah is darshan from with. Yeah, so this I think is a big controversial thing.
I assume we don't want to get into a very long discussion about.
Right, but I'm correct in assuming that this is one of the big controversies in the Rambam, right?
Yeah, this is like the Rambam's attack on this is the harshest I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, that was what you're
attack.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oops, sorry, I just clicked on the wrong window here. You know what? So I'm gonna try stopping sharing for 1 second and then resharing because maybe that's the source of our woes. Give me a sec. No. You guys still see the screen?
I see it.
It says this, please move this window away from the shared application. Never seen that before. And now the fact that I'm not hearing you leads me to question whether...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you still see the text?
Yeah, but there's a weird splotchy part. It's just like grayed out.
Okay, yeah, that's like, yeah, that's kind of the same thing I'm seeing here. All right, whatever. Okay, third one, ein roy limnos mitzvos ein nohagos ladoros. Okay, so you don't count mitzvos which are not nohag ladoros. So let's say like, I think examples are like, let's say following the blast of the shofar to signal the moving of the camps. You know, things that were only for that generation. You don't count that. Oop. Now the screen is black.
Now I don't see any shared thing.
Oh, and now it's indicating that it's frozen. All right. Oh, yeah, I can hear you though. Okay. All right. Whatever. You have the source. I don't know if this is screen sharing or not. I'm just gonna go on. All right. Torch Walpat. So the fourth one, she'ein roy limnos hatzivuim hakolim hatorah kula. So Pesach mentioned that this morning, this Sunday here. You don't count tzivuim that encompass kol Torah kula. So I think one of the examples the Rambam gives is kedoshim tiyu, that all the mitzvos are, help you attain kedusha. So you don't count that. Or asisa hayashar v'atov, that encompasses kol Torah kula. And then he has this is a side point. He has one exception to the rule. I don't know what the exception is. He explains it, but it's an exception. Is avoda. He says that even though the psukim that say that you should serve Hashem encompass kol Torah kula, he says yesh bo yichud. There is a specification in avoda, which is the mitzvah of tefillah. So that I think says more about now. Now I actually think that they're gone. No, they're here. I don't know.
We can hear you.
Yeah,
you're here?
Totally
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. Weird. Yeah. Weird. All right. Anyway, so that's number 5. 6. 5. She'ein roy limnos tam hamitzvah mitzvah b'fnei asma. You don't count the reason for a mitzvah as a mitzvah on its own. I'm trying to think if I remember an example of this.
Was that one of the examples?
For number 4, but I'm looking for number 5 now. They don't count the tam of the mitzvah as a mitzvah on its own. Let me just.
Continue.
I don't think so. Let me just. I'm just going to read it here. He says, "Pa'amim yavo b'tam hamitzvos me'ein lavin." So sometimes the reasons for mitzvah appear to be like lavin, like Lozar says, "V'yachashiv bam shemichlal mashim ne'latma," and you might think that you count them on their own. V'zeh ka'omro lo yuchal ba'alah harishon asher shalcha lashuv lakachta v'lo sachati es haaretz. So this is about when a woman divorces her husband, then gets married to another guy, then divorces him, then her original husband can't take her again. And it says, "V'lo sachati es haaretz," and you shall not, cause the land to be sinful. Hu tam l'isr mashakadim. That's the reason for the isr from before. Ki ilu yomar, as if it said, ki ata im tasezeh, if you do this, tarbe ha'hefsed ba'aretz, then harm will be abundant in the land. U'omro, as it says, al tachalo asbitcha lahazno sa v'lo sizne ha'aretz. As it says, don't whore out your daughter to prostitute her, lest you cause the land to be licentious. You should not become impure through them, and you should not make yourselves impure through them and become impure. Achar Zochro iser haminim shnesu achilasam kiluhu yisaper tiasia zeh shehisir mimenu hutumas nefesh. So in other words, those are reasons those should not be counted on their own. There's no becoming impure through eating non-kosher food as its own tam, or like making the land licentious. Yeah, okay. 6. Sheha mitzvah sheyihye ba aseh velos aseh. Roy limnos aseh sheba im mitzvos aseh velav sheba im mitzvos los aseh. That's much more of a technical one. When you've got a mitzvah that has an aseh and a corresponding los aseh.
Would you have thought that they would be together?
I guess you would have thought that you would have counted it only as one, maybe. Let me just check it and see what he says. Okay, so it says there's 3 categories of this. Over alav yavor al mitzvos los aseh, kamo Shabbos v'yom tov u'shmita. She'asiyas malacha behem mitzvos los aseh, v'hamenucha behem mitzvos aseh, kamo she'isbar. V'chein tainis tzom kippur mitzvos aseh, v'ha'achila bo mitzvos los aseh. So that's number 1. That's what I call like the 2 sides of the same coin structure, where like when you eat on Yom Kippur, that same act is a violation of los aseh and the aseh. Like it's just the flip side. V'im sheyihi lav shekadmu aseh, kamo omro be'ones umoti shemra v'lo tihye leisha v'mitzvos aseh, v'amar achar kach lo yuchal shalcha koyamav zo mitzvos los aseh. Okay, so that's another one where if the rapist, so he has to marry her and he can't divorce her. So how's that different than the first category? Lav shekadma aseh. It's a lav that was preceded by an aseh. Meaning you must do this and you can't do that. As opposed to
one action being...
I guess so, right. V'im sheyihi lav kodem, or another one is when the lav comes first. Achraki natik laseh. This is a lav hanitak laseh, which I always forget what that means. Kamo omer lo sikach ha'im al habanim v'achrach shaleach tishalach has ha'im. Right, so there's the isser of taking the mother from the eggs, and then an aseh of shaleach tishalach has ha'im. V'chom min me'elu roy shimane aseh shebo bichlal mitzvos aseh v'lav shebo bichlal mitzvos los aseh. Kibuber amru chachamim b'chol achas mehen shein mitzvos aseh u'mitzvos los aseh. V'harvi pa'amim yomru aseh sheba v'lav sheba. Hu davar mavur she'inyan hatzivui b'hem zulas ha'inyan hashara u'shneim shnei inyanim u'nivdalim tzivui achad mehem v'hizhir min ha'achar. So I guess what you would do is you would count them only as one, since they're either like I could see, you could see intuitively someone saying, don't eat on Yom Kippur is the same as fast on Yom Kippur.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. 7. Shein roy limnos dikduke ha-mitzvah dikduke mitzvah. You don't count the particulars of a mitzvah as a mitzvah. Right? So let's say, I think the example of this is like the Rambam does not count techeles as a separate mitzvah. It's a component of tzitzis. So you don't count, you shall make techeles as its own mitzvah. Obviously this gets very complicated about what you do count as like arm tefillin and head, like what is a dikduk and what is an ikr, Number 8, she'ein roy limnos shlilas hachiyuv im ha'azhara. You should not count the negation of obligation with the lav. So what does that mean? I have to look at what it means.
Like a tour?
I don't know. That's what I would have thought. Let's see. Da shelo taseh hi echad mishnei chalk. Oh, this is a long one. Yeah, you know what? Let's not go into this right now. Maybe I'll look at it. I have an English translation at home. I just get examples there. It's too long to go through right now. The 9th shorash is she'ein roy limnos halavim ha'aseh aval hadvarim humusar behem v'hamitzuva behem chazara al tzivui hi lechizuk v'lo lehosafas mitzvah. Right. So I think what he's saying is you don't count repetitions as separate mitzvos, I believe. Yeah, this, I really feel like we're doing this injustice, but like to read through all, this is also an extremely long one. Just let me see if I can get the gist of it. Yeah, like I'll just give this example. He gives this example of Shabbos. He says, "Kvar noda shatzivu b'Shabbos lanuach Nichpa b'Torah shtei misrei panim. So, the Shabbos is repeated in the Torah 12 times. Ha'im yachshav echad mimone hamitzvos ki mitzvos aseh hamenucha b'Shabbos hi shtei misrei mitzvos. So, would anyone in the right mind count this as 12 mitzvos? V'chein ba'a ha'azhara me'achilas dam sheva pamim hayachshav gamkin maskil v'yomar ki iser hadam sheva mitzvos. Zeh ma shelo yiteh bo echad. Right, no one's going to make that mistake. So that I think is what he's saying. You don't count the repetitions as separate mitzvos.
It's interesting from that. It seems like he's not necessarily negating different habits here. Like it's not like you would have thought. Not.
Well, the reason why I have a reservation there is for that instance, yes, but like many of these other instances, then the other Monei mitzvos actually did count them. So yeah, I just don't know if that's for all of his 14 or just that one. That was different. Siri. It's not proper to count the introductions that are for a certain purpose as a mitzvah. So he has a little introduction here. He says, "Pamim yavo tzivuyim b'Torah ein osan tzivuyim mitzvah, avahim hakdamos la'asiyas mitzvah ki'ilu hu misaper eich roi shetaz ha-mitzvah hahi." So, for example, Dimyon zev omro v'lakachta solas v'afisa osa. Ki eno roy shimne lekicha solas mitzvah v'asiyaso lechem mitzvah v'nimne omro v'nasata al hashulchan lechem panim lifanai tamid. So, right. So lakachta solas v'afisa osa. Take flour and bake it is really part of lechem hapanim. Lechem hapanim is the mitzvah. You don't count that first phrase as a mitzvah because it really was just a lead-in to the process or a I think we mean by hakdama means like a prerequisite for the mitzvah. Don't count a prerequisite for mitzvah as the mitzvah. 12. She'en roy limnos chelki ha-mitzvah kol chelik b'fnei atzma im killa mitzvah achas. Gam mitzvah she'enam aklo zo hein achas. Okay, so maybe that's what the tchelis example is. Maybe that's not like what I said before. Right, I said dikduke mitzvah. Here he's saying a component of the mitzvah. So what I said before about tchelis really applies here. I'm not sure what an example of the dikduke mitzvah is then. I think, let me just look at an example of the dikduke mitzvah. For example, for the dikduke mitzvah, yeah, I'll have to look at this later on. I don't want to err by reading too superficially. Okay, the 11th, she'en roy limnos. Oh yeah, I just read that. 12, she'en roy limnos chelke hamalacha mi hamalachos sheba hatzivui ba'asiyasam kol chelik b'fnei atzma. That's weird. Shouldn't count a component of one of the malachos. He's talking about malachos. Yeah, I don't think this is not just Malach Shabbos. So he gives an example of Asuli Mikdash. So that's one mitzvah, even though building the menorah is one thing, building the Aron is another thing. Hashor Shlosha Asar Shamitzvos Lo Yarbe Misparam B'Mispar Hayamim Shnischaya Behen HaMitzvah Hahi. So the number of the mitzvah does not increase with the days that you're obligated in that mitzvah. So don't think, for example, that refraining from eating chametz for 7 days is 7 mitzvos, or each day of the Yom Tov is its own mitzvah. The 14th one is Roy Limnos Ha'amadas Ha'gedarim B'mitzvos Aseh. It's proper to count the setting up of fences as a mitzvos aseh. I assume what he means there is that the Eichroi, that's interesting.
It might be aim.
Oh wait, did I misread it? Maybe I misread it. Are you looking? You're looking on the link I sent, or some other thing?
So.
Huh?
Yeah.
Mine just. Yeah. This is another long one. Had I known, I would have made photocopies earlier. So I think what we'll do is like this: is let's stop here for today, and then what I'm going to do is I have the English that I just need to skim to make sure that I was reading this correctly. But you can already see how if a person made a mistake in one of these things, it's really a mistake about like what mitzvahs are.
Yeah.
Like it's a fundamental mistake. And I think what appears to us as like quibbling, is that a word? Right? Over like, do you count this mitzvah or that mitzvah? really the Rambam views this as much more fundamental, and like that's why he says if you're missing any one of these 14 rules, you really like don't understand what a mitzvah is, and the Torah is like a sealed book.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Good. So we'll stop for here, and then so tomorrow, in addition to doing that, then what I'd like to do maybe, do you want to revisit B'Shem Hashem Kel Olam? Isaac, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. Good. All right. So let's do that then. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
I mean,